Welcome to the Fret Frontier. Today, we're going to be talking about the circle of fifths. This is a musical tool that we use to summarize different pitches that we're going to play on our instrument. When we're done constructing it, we can use it as a cheat sheet for a variety of things. What we'll be doing with it is using it as an aid to help us work horizontally across the neck of our instrument. So the easiest way to learn a fretted instrument is to go horizontally across the frets. This gives you the different patterns and the relationships in scales and between different degrees of notes. So what we're going to do is build the circle of fifths together, and then we're going to use it to learn our major scales across the neck as the first thing that we do. We'll also add in our relative minors, and we'll work on a variety of different chord progressions so you know how they work together. And then finally, we'll use the circle of fifths as a cheat sheet to help us play with ukulele players or guitar players. So if you show up someplace with a ukulele and you want to play the same music that a guitar player is playing, you won't be able to use the same chord names they're using because you're tuned into a different key. This circle of fifths will help you figure out what chord you need to play. Here's a sneak peek at what a simple circle of fifths looks like. On the outer ring, we have our collection of major scales going clockwise. We have C, G, D, A, E, and so on. Inside, then the next ring of the circle, we have the relative minor, A minor, E minor, B minor, F sharp minor. So when we're done, what we'll have is a collection of our major scales. They're related minor that both share the same key signature. Quickly, for example, C major is a natural key, no sharps, no flats. A minor, natural key, no sharps, no flats. G major has one sharp, and that is the F. E minor is its relative minor. It shares the same key signature. It will have one sharp, F. Let's go ahead now and start building our own circle of fifths. Our starting point, we have a bunch of circles to start collecting our information in. At the top of the circle, we're going to start with C. That's our natural scale. It has no sharps and no flats. As a brief reminder, we're working with the musical alphabet at all times here. That has only 7 letters in it. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. When we get to G, we start again at A. So if we're going to start a scale on C, we're going to go from C and end on C. The table that you see over to the right-hand side shows where we're going to collect these degrees. Our first degree then, or the first letter in this major scale, is going to be C. As we go following the musical alphabet from C, our next degree or our next note name is going to be D, followed by E. The 4th degree will be F. 5th degree will be G. Now we've run out of letters in our musical alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We have to start over again on A to continue our scale. So now we have an A as our 6th degree, B is our 7th degree, which brings us to C and shows us that if we begin, wherever we begin, whatever letter we start on, we're going to end on. And that is called an octave, this area from here to here. So the first piece of information that we have collected by building this scale is the basic pattern that goes across the neck of our instrument. Let's take a look at our baritone ukulele instrument diagram. We're seeing it from the perspective of the 4th string or the lowest sounding string at the bottom of the diagrams. And then we have our layout of frets coming across here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So when we talk about the key of C being natural, no sharps and no flats, we'll see on this diagram that we have no sharps, no flats. Here's our letter names all filled out. You can see the C's, or the root of our scale name, is highlighted in red. And we see the natural pattern of the way the neck of a fretted instrument works. When we think about our contiguous musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, B and C and E and F are always together. Everything else is a whole step apart. Let's take an example here illustrating that. A to B has this fret being skipped. We have our A, we skip the next fret, and B is the next letter. That's considered a whole step. B and C are right next to each other. We don't skip any fret. Let's take a look at the C scale then, looking at it on this instrument. If we take a look, okay, if we have our second string, starts with a B right over here. The next note would be C, a half step away. So that's our first fret. We just start off on that first fret. Between C, there'll be a whole step to D. Between D, there'll be a whole step to E. So we skip a fret. Now we're on our fifth fret. Between E and F, there will be a half step. They'll be right next to each other. F and G, we have a whole step. Between G and A, we skip a fret to get over to the A. We're all the way up to the 10th fret now. We're going to skip another fret to get to B. And then B and C, they're right next to each other. So we're on the 12th fret for B. Right next to it, 13th fret is C. Now we'll be playing these on our instrument after we've built some of the scales, but this is just a quick peek as to how this works. All right, let's go back to our circle. So we've built our C major scale. So we're going to put a poorly drawn natural sign right here to remind us that there's no sharps and no flats. The relative minor key of a major key comes from or starts with the 6th degree. In this case, it's going to be A. So we take that A. This is going to be our minor key. So we have C major, A minor. We've built our first relationship. Now, the circle of fifths comes from the fact that we're going to start our next note from the 5th degree of the scale we just built. And that 5th degree in this case is G. So what we're going to do is copy our G over here. We're also going to pick up the last 4 tones of the scale that we just finished building, starting with that 5th degree. So the last part of our major scale that we just built becomes the first part of our next major scale, G, A, B, and C. No work at all required there. We're going to continue from C. So after C comes D in the musical alphabet. And now we want to take a look at the pattern that we're building. What happened here? When we take a look at this C scale, we have a half step naturally occurring between E and F and B and C. So that means when we're building our scale, all of these other relationships are whole steps. Between the 1st and the 2nd degree is a whole step. 2nd degree and the 3rd degree is a whole step. Then we have our half step between 3 and 4. We have another whole step between 4 and 5. Another whole step between 4 and 6. Another whole step between 6 and 7, and a half step at 8. So what's our pattern here? For the scale, we make the pattern of whole step, half, and then whole step, half. So this scale that we're building, this G scale, so far follows this pattern. Naturally, we have our G and our A, they're a whole step apart. That's what we want. Our A and our B, they're a whole step apart. That's what we want. Between this 3rd and 4th degree, we want a half step, and that's what we have. B and C naturally have a half step occurring between them. Our next note, we're just following C to D. That's a whole step, so we don't have to do anything to it. Next is E. Copy it in there and check the pattern. We need a whole step there between D and E. D and E have a whole step. They're not E and F, they're not B and C, so that's a whole step. Our next note is F. Between E and F is a half step, but our pattern dictates that we should have a whole step here between E and F. So how do we get a whole step there? We're going to have to make that F sharp. We're going to have to raise it 1/2 step. I'll show you that on the diagram in just a moment. Now that we've made the F sharp or higher than it was before, when I add my G, I end my G, normally between F and G would be a whole step. But now that I have brought F closer to G by making it sharp, sharps raise a pitch by 1/2 step. It's now right next to the G. So now that fits my pattern. I have one sharp in this key. That's going to be my F sharp. And my minor is going to be E. That's my 6th degree. So I'm going to have E minor. So here's our diagram showing our baritone ukulele now with the G major scale laid out on it. And the reason we're taking a look at this is so that you can see what happens when we make the F sharps. So we're taking a look now at the center of the neck on the 2nd string. Between our E and our F sharp, we now have a whole step. F would normally occur right here, right next to the F. By making it sharp, we've moved it up from the 6th fret to the 7th fret. Because we did that, now when we move to the G, we have a half step. They're right next to each other. Let's go back to our circle. Okay, let's continue to build our pattern based on what we did before, going clockwise around our circle of fifths. Our next starting point is going to be from the 5th degree of that G scale. That will be D. We'll take the last 4 notes of that G scale to start this next scale. So notice what else happens. Once you find a sharp, it moves into the next key signature. So when I get into D, I will be finding a new sharp in this key. So we add a sharp each time we move around this circle going clockwise. But we also bring over the sharps that we have found so far. So the key of D is going to have F sharp and then a new sharp we're going to end up finding. So after G comes the letter A. We start our musical alphabet over again. And our natural pattern between G and A is going to be a whole step. Next, B. We want a whole step pattern there. A and B are a whole step away from each other. That's great. We're fine. Next letter in the alphabet is C. When we take a look at the pattern we're supposed to have there, we need a whole step there, though. Between 6 and 7 is a W, a whole step. B and C are a half step apart naturally, right? B and C, E and F, next to each other naturally. So to pull them apart, we're going to have to make this C sharp. We're going to raise it 1/2 step. This gives us our new sharp. So the key of D will have F sharp and C sharp in it, in its key signature. Then our C sharp, that will be right next to the D. C and D are normally a whole step apart, but because we have brought that C closer to the D by raising it with that sharp, now they're a half step away from each other and it fits the pattern. We're going to take our 6th degree. So now we have B minor here as our relative minor, and it has the same key signature as the D, which will be the F sharp and the C sharp. Our next scale is going to be A. So let's get the A. That's our 5th degree. Add this over here. We are going to take these last 4 letters to start our A major scale. Next letter in the alphabet is E. We need a whole step between our 4th and 5th degree, D and E. They have a whole step. Our next letter of the alphabet is F. We know that's going to be sharp because we got the sharp from the G back when we were doing our G scale over here. We're going to carry that over. F sharp. Let's check the pattern. Between the 5th and 6th degree, we want a whole step. Between E and F sharp is a whole step, so we're good to go. We add the G over here. F sharp to G is a half step away from each other. We raised the F, so now it's right next to the G. We're going to have to sharp this G. Then we finish up with A. Let's take a look at our relative minor. In this case is going to be F sharp minor. Our new sharp is the G sharp. So the key of A major is going to have F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp in it. And so will the key of F sharp minor. Let's move on to our next scale. It's going to be E. We take these 4 notes, these last 4 notes, carry them over. After A, in the musical alphabet comes B, so we're still building our major scale. A to B needs to be a whole step, 4th and 5th degree. C, that's going to be sharp. Between our 5th and our 6th degree, that should be a whole step. B to C sharp is a whole step. We've pulled them apart from each other. Now the C is right next to the D. It's sharp. We need a whole step here between the 6th and the 7th degree, so that's our new sharp, D sharp. Now, what's another pattern that we're seeing here when we get over here? Let's finish this up. This is the E. We're noticing that we get our new sharp each time from that 7th position. When we came over through that G scale, F was the sharp. That was the 7th position of that scale. When we came through the D, C was our new sharp. It was the 7th position, the 7th degree of that particular scale. So that's another useful pattern for us to be aware of. Our relative minor in this case, coming from the 6th degree, that's going to be our C sharp minor. All right. Our next major scale comes from the 5th degree as our starting point. That's going to be B. We bring over those 5 characters. We have F sharp. We already know it's going to be sharp because we had that sharp before back over here when we were in G, right? And now we've got, after F sharp, we know we're going to have G sharp because we have that G sharp in the key of A. We bring those things over. So we have 2 ways we can do it. We can do it looking at patterns from the whole steps and the half steps. We can do it looking at patterns from our own circle of fifths that we're building. And now we found out before this pattern here, we got this 7th degree coming up. It's not going to be just an A, it's going to be an A sharp. That's where we get our new sharp from. This is our new sharp, A sharp. And then we end with our B. Our relative minor, or the minor version of this scale that will have the same sharps and flats, will be G sharp. Okay, so we have one more to go to finish up our sharp side of the circle of fifths. So we're going to start off with our 5th degree. That's the F sharp. Here's our F sharp. And we bring over these other degrees. After B, we're going to have C sharp. So C sharp to D sharp is a whole step. Our next letter will be E. We've got a sharp, the E. So that's our new sharp. And then we end on F sharp. Our relative minor is going to be our D sharp, the 6th degree. So that's completed the sharp side of our circle of fifths. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next episode when we start playing these scales. Thanks so much for joining me.